Hey everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about all of the spooky, all of the creepy, how to write horror. So we've got a blog post with all the basics of writing horror and I will leave that linked in the description. But today I'm going to be sharing 6 pretty easy tips that you can implement to give the horror that you create more impact. Let's start by talking about one of the easiest but most effective ways to create a creepy image, and that is by using the uncanny valley. The uncanny valley is this phenomenon where we're not really able to make sense of something that looks almost human but isn't quite convincing enough. If we look at it on a scale, faces that are very clearly human don't really freak us out, and something that's clearly not human at all doesn't freak us out. But something that's almost human but not quite there, like a store mannequin or an android or even maybe like a zombie who's looking kind of creepy and monstrous, falls into the uncanny valley, where it's almost human but not human enough that we can feel comfortable or make sense of it. The uncanny valley is one of the most effective tools for creating something really creepy in your piece. If you're trying to create some kind of monster in your piece, but you're not sure how to make them look, think about the uncanny valley. Think about how they could be human, but not quite human. Just off from human enough that it's going to be really unnerving. Number 2, use your monster as a metaphor. Now, something that's just spooky and creepy and terrifying for the sake of being spooky and creepy and terrifying is great, but it can have even more impact if it's representative of something within the character. A monster can feel kind of nonsensical if it's just kind of running around being terrifying for the sake of being terrifying. But if the way it acts and even the way it looks is based on something within the character, an emotion the character is feeling, or some kind of problem that the character has, and the monster is a manifestation of that, it can be absolutely terrifying. A great example of this is the Australian horror film The Babadook, where the monster, the Babadook, is representative of the main character's grief. It makes it all the more impactful than if the monster were just kind of terrorizing them for the sake of being scary. This way, through the monster's actions, we're getting insight into the character and really seeing how the character's grief looks like and how it's terrorizing her emotionally. We're seeing that represented in a very visual way, and it's quite impactful. Number 3, use the power of an image and the senses. When writing something really terrifying, try to hone in on really specific, unnerving images. Sometimes just a single image can really stick with the reader and be something really scary. When describing something terrifying, try to use all of the senses. Think about smells, think about, the taste in the air even. You can tap into kind of the disgusting element through the smell or the taste in the air. You can create something really unnerving through a sound that just feels really unnatural or creepy. And of course, you can think visually. And think about creating a really specific image. This could just be one sentence that's going to really stick in the reader's mind. This is a great way to use the uncanny valley. If you just have one sentence that's describing the monster, use the power of imagery to your advantage to create something that really sticks with the reader. We've got a video on writing imagery in descriptions, so I'll leave that in the cards. All of it applies if you want to use it in a really creepy way. Number 4, control the atmosphere and tone. One of the really visceral elements of the horror genre is the way that the atmosphere and tone kind of just envelops you and you feel kind of trapped in it. Even when nothing bad has happened yet, we might get this impending feeling of dread building up just from the tone of the story. You can control the atmosphere through the imagery that you use and how you use the senses. Think about things like the color palette that your story has, as well as the emotions that your character is feeling and how that might be permeated through the tone. Number 5, juxtapose it with a little bit of comedy or heartfelt emotion. Now, the horrifying is pretty horrifying, but it's almost more horrifying when juxtaposed with a moment of lightness. When we see the characters in a bit of a lighter state, whether happy with their family and friends or sharing a bit of a joke, a bit of a comic moment, can actually really highlight how terrifying the terrifying thing is. It makes the story a lot more well-rounded as well. Instead of just being scary, scary, scary all the way through, having a moment of lightness or two can really remind you that these are people and we're in the midst of something terrifying. It just allows you to humanize your characters a little bit more, which can make the impending terror they're about to face even more horrifying. And finally, number 6, utilize suspense. Our video on Tuesday was all about suspense, so I will leave you a link to that in the cards. Suspense is a staple of the horror genre because it's that feeling that something terrible is about to happen, but we don't know what it is. With horror, you can string your readers along for quite a long period of time, building up that feeling of dread, that impending fear of the jump scare or the arrival of the monster, so that when that jump scare or the terrifying thing actually happens, it's so much more impactful because the reader has been feeling so tense waiting for this to happen for pages and pages or even chapters and chapters. So to summarize, you can make even spookier monsters by implementing the uncanny valley theory, as well as using the monster as a metaphor to reveal something about the character. The power of imagery and the senses, as well as the atmosphere and tone, can have a huge effect on the power of the horrific elements. They can create a feeling of dread, as well as images that really stick with the reader. And to really highlight the power of the horror in the piece, you can juxtapose it with a bit of heartfelt emotion or comedy and use suspense to your best advantage. Again, if you want to learn more about horror, you can check out the blog post linked in the description. I'll leave some resources for you there. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing videos every Tuesday and Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.